Bonsoir. Merci, c'est gentil. La grande question qu'on se pose avec Anissia, c'est English or French? Y a-t-il des gens qui ne parlent pas le français? Are there any? Yeah, there are non-French speaking people in the room. So
Dénoncez-vous, j'en vois un.
There's one person that doesn't speak a word of French, apparently. You don't understand a word of French, do you? Right,
No.
because the French people have a reputation to be very polite, we are going to do the whole talk in English then.
And we're very grateful, aren't we?
Right, it's going to be in English. Are there any people that don't speak a word of English in the room?
That's the French rebelling. Look, we'll do the conversation in English, and then, sorry for those who don't speak English, Guillaume will read his book in French, because it's...
Well, it hasn't been translated, and I can't translate it directly like that. It's a bit too difficult, a bit tricky.
I'm sure you could.
No, I can't, no.
But anyway, I'll start with a little intro of you, and I'll start with thanking you for being here, because
thank you for having me.
It's very precious. And so, where to start? You're an acclaimed actor, both on the screen and on the stage, and we'll come back to that. You entered the Comédie-Française in '98, which is nearly 30 years ago, and where you interpreted many roles, and not just from the classic repertoire. You're also a director. You staged Huis Clos by Sartre in Tokyo, and no less than Free Opera. And you also directed 2 films, which you also wrote, Guillaume et les garçons à table, and Marilyn. You're also a very familiar voice on the radio, because you've been the voice of literature for years on France Inter every Saturday, reading excerpts from literature. And all this is a very short intro. It could be much longer, but we're here to talk about your book, Le Buveur de brume. And because I have to translate it for the non-French speakers, it would be, I guess, the drinker of mist. But it's
it has a name. It's called a fog catcher.
A fog catcher.
Yeah.
From the birds, from the nets.
No, not from the bird.
Catch.
No. It's they exist. Actually, they don't exist in Caucasus Mountains, because there's no shortage of water as well at all there. But they exist in South America, and they're people that live in very dry mountains, and they put on the nets. They put on huge nets between mountains to collect the drops from the fog in order to have some water, and they're called the fog catchers.
Fog catchers.
Yeah.
And so the mist at first is very literal, because the book starts in Tbilisi, and at nightfall you're walking towards the National Museum, very impatient to spend the night amongst all the works of art and the portrait of your great-grandmother, a Georgian princess. But nothing goes according to plan. And then gradually in the book, the mist becomes something else, the mist of ghosts pasts, of major works of art which have influenced you. But let's go back to the beginning. What goes wrong? What actually happened at that museum?
Well, first of all, to explain to the audience, there's this book belongs to a collection called My Night in a Museum. It's a French collection. It's Alina Gurdiel that had this brilliant idea of asking authors and sometimes just artists to choose a museum anywhere in Europe most of the time, and to choose a museum and then to spend a night alone in this museum and to write a book about it. And I've always refused to write, because I had this radio show in France for 11 years, reading all the best novels in the world every Saturday. So I refused to write. And then one day I stopped this program. I stopped reading all those fantastic books. And I finally accepted because there was a frame that was quite reassuring for me, and the idea that it was just about this night in a museum. And I said, well, something must happen, and why not? And at first I had chosen a museum in Russia. I wanted to go either to the Tretiakov Gallery in Moscow or to the Russian Museum in St. Petersburg. I accepted to write this novel on February the 10th, 2022, and obviously 14 days later, the whole thing collapsed. So I said to myself, well, sod it. I'm not going to go to a museum in Russia. I'm not going to go to a museum at all. I couldn't imagine anywhere else, really, because I felt so attracted to these painters that I don't know what are they called in English?
Les ambulants.
Yeah, in French is les ambulants, the itinérés.
Perhaps the itinerants.
The itinerants. I don't know what that movement is called, but it's a movement of Russian painters of the end of the 19th century that I love. And anyway, and finally I went to Georgia, where the president of Georgia gave me this medal, and while I thanked her, I said to her that not only I felt very moved and very honored by this medal, but also I felt obliged. And when I actually said that, I suddenly realized that I do feel obliged towards Georgia, and which is part of my roots. And I said, well, might as well go to a Georgian museum, and might as well be the one where there's this famous portrait of my great-grandmother by Sorin. And so I said, I'd like to write my book to spend the night here in the museum where there's the portrait of my great-grandmother. And they said, well, normally it's at the Beaux-Arts Museum, but now the museum is being restored, and so all the collection of the Beaux-Arts Museum is now at the National Museum. And I said, well, fair enough, send me and spend the night at the National Museum. So I arrived at the National Museum. Everything had been organized through the President of the Republic of Georgia, and then the Secretary of State, and then whatever, Foreign Affairs, and blah, blah, blah. And the day, 19th of December, 24, I think, was it? I arrived there with my cousins, Georgian cousins who were there, brought me there, and I said, hello, coming to spend the night. And the guy said, it's not a hotel. I said, well, I know it isn't, but, night in a museum with the president. Ничего. Как ничего? Нет? What do you mean? And I wasn't on the list. There was nothing. And I said, but... So we called the lady in charge of communication manager of the Secretary of Culture, and with this really kind of soft voice, she said, oh, I'm sorry, it's a misunderstanding. No, it's not National Museum, it's National Gallery. I said, what is it? And my cousin went, it's there. And it's this small, very St. Petersburg architecture, small museum, tiny, and there's only 2 rooms. And so I crossed the little garden between the National Museum and the National Gallery, and I arrived there, and they were all there, all the officials, waiting for me, and I went bananas. I literally went bananas. I yelled. I said, what the fuck am I doing here? And they were all kind of a bit stoned like this. And I said, where's the portrait of my great-grandmother? Oh, don't worry. It's been brought up this morning. It's there. And I went up the stairs, and between those 2 rooms, there was this tiny place, and they just shoved it there. Like, here's your fucking princess, and leave us alone. And I literally, for me, it was like a big whack in the face. I felt so insulted. And I came downstairs and I said, I came as a Georgian and you're treating me like a tourist. You can all bugger off. I'm not spending a night here. Definitely not. I'm not staying 1 more minute in this place. And there's a very clever lady who came up to me she had this typical golden eyes that some Georgians have. And she came to me, very elegant, and she said, "Sir, I understand your disappointment so well, because the National Museum is a fantastic museum and the collection there are fantastic. And of course you're disappointed. And I can only understand you deeply, and I'm so sorry. There has been a misunderstanding. Nevertheless, here in those two rooms, one of the two rooms, we have the paintings of the great Nino Pirosmani." And I said, "I know you do. I was here last May. I saw it. I saw the exhibition, yeah." Huh. And she said, "Right, I'm sure you did. But has anyone told you the story of Pirosmani and of those paintings?" "No." She said, "I'm a big fan of Pirosmani. Will you allow me to bring you upstairs and to tell you the story of those paintings?" And I said, "Madam, you're a very, very intelligent lady. And of course I will come with you. And please do tell me the story." And that's it. I was stuck in it. Did you expect such a long answer just for one question? Do you guys have time? My favorite author is Proust, by the way. Lots of time. Lots of time.
Well, we have 1 hour. And that's a pattern for the rest of the book, because you're saved from your anger, you're rescued from your anger by this conversation on art. And then art keeps coming back, and you describe how it makes you, it builds you.
Saves me.
Exactly. But the first character to crop up in your book is your father, because you become extraordinarily angry, and you get that from him, apparently. And there's some brutal pages about your parents, but they're also very redeeming ones, where there's a sense, and that's very striking in the book, a sense of bienveillance, benevolence, and forgiveness towards them, because what you describe of your childhood is it's another era of how you create childhood
19th
nowadays.
century. I was literally brought up in the 19th century, yes. No, it's true. With the Scottish nanny, thank God.
Oh, you have a Scottish nanny?
Yeah, she was a laugh. And she would say, "Are you deaf or stupid?" No, she was brilliant. But then, I was brought up literally in the 19th century, and my father indeed was a very angry man. But actually the book, what happened is that I wrote during that night, but I wrote really out of anger and disappointment. And then when I came back to France, I wrote like for 2 weeks, but still something very bitter. And I just dropped the book, and I couldn't write anymore. I couldn't write a single word. And I left it for like 18 months. And then I went to Maine to visit some very dear friends of mine, American couple, and he's a famous writer, and she was a publisher. And in the car, I said to Michelle, who was driving me from Portland to their place in Maine, I said, "The problem, Michelle, is that what I've been writing is just shit." And she just turned to me and she went, "First draft is always shit. And it's got to be shit, because if not, it's never going to get any better." And for me, it was like, it freed me. And I wrote there about like 90 pages in 5 days. And it just deblocked the whole thing. And I decided to write for my son, who's now 19, to explain to him where my anger came from, in order for him to understand that the few times, several times, where I went bananas during his childhood with him, for him to understand that it wasn't the anger. He didn't cause the anger. The anger came from before. It came from my father, and my father's anger came from his mum, and her anger came from a trauma that she had lived. And so I wanted to explain to him that when you inherit, of course, in France there's a law where, I don't know about Great Britain, but in France there's a law that allows you not to accept an inheritance. You're not obliged to accept an inheritance. But that's for the law. I mean, sometimes there are things where you are mature enough or grown up enough or strong enough, or you've been working on yourself enough to say, this, I refuse to transmit it. This, I'm not going to repeat the scheme. But sometimes you may say, I refuse to, you'll still do it. I don't know what's the word in English of atavisme. Anyone could translate that? Atavisme? Come on, the frogs. Atavisme? No? Anyway, atavisme, it's something you inherit that is, it's like something, not a disease, but something not very pleasant that just goes on from generation to generation. So that's what I inherited. Oh yes, someone is Googling. Thank you. Yes?
Atavism.
Atavism. Now you know. Anyway, so I wanted to explain to him that sometimes you do have atavism, but also because my shrink kept on telling me, can you stop collecting all those memories? Because I do kind of tend to remember everything. And he says, you don't have to carry all the archives of the family. And I said, right, so what I'll do is that I'll compile them in a book, and I'll tell my son, you don't have to keep all the archives there in this book, you know, just shove it on a shelf and you can read them whenever you want, but you don't have to carry the whole thing. That was the idea.
And it is indeed a sort of album of recollections and influences and what mattered most to you as you became a man. And so I also grew up in a white Russian family, and I was convinced for years that the Parc Monceau and then the Rue d'Aru, where the Russian Orthodox Church is, all that was Russia, because that's an area where we spoke Russian. And for you too, you discovered Russia and its authors and its art. But then you write in your book very beautifully, but the full 24th of February 22, Putin invaded Ukraine, and it's a sentence that come back. And for some here, it was such a great crime that it severed their connection to Russian culture. And it didn't cross your mind.
Well, it did. No, it did cross my mind. But my grandmother always told me, on ne renie rien, on n'usurpe rien et on ne se justifie jamais. You don't deny anything, you don't pretend anything, and you never justify yourself. So, I mean, my mother is half Russian, half Georgian, so I have both, and I'm not going to deny the fact that I'm also Russian, and that Russian culture is part of my heritage. But today, I must say, I have difficulties reading Dostoevsky. Chekhov I can still read, but honestly, Dostoevsky at the moment I can't. I really can't. I have problems with the Russian culture. Sometimes I do. Just now, because of the war, I keep on thinking about the war, and I know it's Putin's war, and I know, but still, there's a nationalism. There's something about the Russian culture when it's too strongly imperialistic and like that. It really annoys me. Well, it more than annoys me. I mean, it moves me, but not in a good way. So, but I'm still Russian Orthodox, and I still. It's just the way we were brought up. It wasn't a question of identity. It was a question of culture. It was just really the religion, but not in a dogmatic way, just more like a nice place to go and to gather and to meet. But it was more like celebrating. And
your journey towards Georgia starts in Chatou with your grandmother and great-grandmother.
Yeah. They were fantastic. Well, I mean, I've been really lucky to have those. I mean, my great-grandmother, she died when I was 14, so I did spend a lot of time with her and my grandmother, and both of them were so cultured. I mean, my grandmother, Kai, for example, she spoke, but not only did she speak, but she spoke and she had the culture and the sense of humor of 5 languages. Russian, French, English, Spanish, and Italian. And she would make Italian laugh in Italian and Spanish people laugh in Spanish. And she would read, every week she would read one book per week. And 1 week was Italian, the other week was Russian, the other week was Spanish, the other week was, she would change language every week. And she really had a great culture. She was fantastic. The text, the relation with the text and poetry, and she taught me Pushkin. She taught me, but in an incredible way. And I remember one day she said, "What are you studying at drama school?" And I said, "Oh, I'm doing a scene between Horace and Curius." She said, "No, darling, you can't say that. There's the scene between Horace and Curius. Que désormais le ciel, les enfers et la terre unissent leur fureur à nous faire la guerre. Que les hommes, les dieux, les démons et le sort préparent contre nous un général effort. Je mets à faire pis en l'état où nous sommes, le sort, les démons et les dieux et les hommes, ceux qu'ils ont de cruel et d'horrible." And she did the whole scene like this. And I went, "When was the last time did you read?" And no, that it was. I mean, you can clap her, but and I said, but when was the last time you read that text? And she, "Oh, I don't know. I was 15," and so it was just the way they were. They just remembered texts, and they had a great sense of humor. She initiated me to Proust. Actually, my grandmother. One day I was supposed to record Proust. And I said, "God, they've asked me to record Proust. It's going to be a nightmare." And she said, "Why?" I said, "But I don't know. I mean, I studied Proust in the Hippocane, but it was boring as hell." "Proust? It's hilarious." And I went, "Really?" She said, "It's to die for. The mistake that all the French people do is that they start at the beginning. That's a huge mistake. You're supposed to start Proust at Guermantes. You're starting to laugh. Then you read Sodome et Gomorrah. You laugh your head off. And once you've read those two, you adore the characters and the writing so much that you go back to the beginning and read the whole thing again. And it's fun." And so she made me literally adore Proust. She would, her and her husband with their friends, they would cast themselves for a dinner party in different characters of In Search of Lost Time. They would say, "Right, tonight you're Madame Verdurin, I'll be Bazin, you'll be doing Charlus," and they would improvise the dinner playing those characters. And they would literally laugh their heads off. It was lots of fun.
That sounds like a very natural footpath to theatre.
Yes.
But actually, you take the decision to become an actor after an extremely sad event, the death of your cousin.
Anissia Gallienne, yes. Yeah, she was a poet. She died at the age of 20. Well, it's not because of, her death
Was
allowed me. It was a trigger because, in fact, what I thought when the day she died, 24th of December 1990, I was 18, and I said to myself, well, I mean, she would have given anything to live, and she can't, and I have the chance to be alive and to be healthy, and my God, the least I can do to honor her memory is to live fully, to do exactly what I want, to be free. It's the least I can do to honor her memory. When I was, for my 18th birthday, she had written a card to me, and she just had written, "Don't forget, carpe diem." Carpe diem. Let's enjoy it.
But there are some beautiful pages on theatre, but you also describe very well how first you begin theatre to be someone else, to escape yourself. And you describe yourself almost as a bad actor at the beginning, like imitating too much.
Yes.
And then you find yourself. And there's a tribute as well to la troupe de la Comédie-Française, to your family there.
Yeah, the group, yes, the company. It's very important. Well, it taught me how to pay attention. I mean, I was so obsessed with my own little blah, 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 that I didn't pay attention enough to others, to listen. Theatre is really, acting is really about listening. And also, well, the big adventure of the company is that because we're forced to work with one another for 20 years. I mean, you can't insult the guy that you can't stand, you've got to live with it, because you might be playing Don Juan's Ganarelle with the guy for 2 years. So you've got to learn and seek for his qualities and see how you're going to actually love the other one. And actually it works. It really works. When I did Oblomov, fantastic Russian book and fantastic play, brilliant part. And when I did Oblomov, the guy who was supposed to play the director said, "Oh, for your neighbor, for your friend, not Stolz, but the other friend, I chose this actor." And it was really a guy I couldn't stand. I went, "Oh, brilliant." And I said to myself, I've got the main part. I'm responsible for the ambiance. I've got to like this guy. And I literally forced myself to like this guy. And now I love him. No, but really, he has flaws, but who hasn't? And we are very different. Actually, he's half Russian as well. But now I really love the guy. And that's the great adventure of the company work. It's really great for that.
And talking of Oblomov, so Oblomov in the Russian language, it's the character absorbed in laziness, enjoying life, and melancholy. And it's something you worry about for yourself. That's you're afraid of what your grandmother called l'ivresse de la mélancolie.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be an Oblomov, and so you work.
Because my mother is really Oblomov. The other day I had her on the phone, and she's ill, the poor lady. But at one point she literally said her epitaph. How do you say epitaph in English?
Epitaph.
Epitaph. She literally said her epitaph because I said, "Are you all right?" And she went, "Non, mais quand je fais rien, je vais bien. When I do nothing, I'm fine." And it's so my mother. And I said, "My God, you just said your epitaph. I mean, it's brilliant. I'm going to put it on your grave. Quand je fais rien, je vais bien." It's exactly who she. I mean, I've seen my mum lying on a bed, reading a Mills and Boom all my childhood. She was reading this fucking Mills and Boom. You know those books with the cover where you have those muscly man and a woman with laces and just like this, and they look really stupid. And I had this cover between my mum and myself. The separation was a Mills and Boom book with this fucking silly cover of a muscle man with a silly lady looking like this. That was the separation between my mum and I. She was lying on a bed with a Mills and Boom, and I would speak for like 10 or 15 minutes before she went, "Oui, quoi encore?" And so Oblomov is really, I'm terrified by Oblomov because I have it in me. I know I have it. That's another atavism that I have, and it's there. And this is why I work so much, because if not, I'm going to literally become Oblomov. I know I can. No problem. No problem. I could fall into a sofa with a plaid. I could live with a plaid. I collection plaid. I adore them. No, literally.
But so it doesn't strike the reader as a risk. I mean, there's a lot of energy in your book, and also an energy in relation to your discovery of Georgia. And it's very moving that you have an immediate connection to your Georgian cousin. You like adopt them straight away, and then you accept Georgian honor, and also you convert to Russian Orthodoxy in Tbilisi with your cousins, and you. So there's a sort of a new world that opens for you, and you embrace it with a non-Oblomovian energy.
Because it's my roots, and I don't know if it happened to some of you, but when you go back to your roots, it reveals you. I mean, it's exactly what happened to me. I remember the first time. When I arrived the first time in Georgia, it was with my grandmother. My grandmother was she was the most elegant and subtle lady in the world, really. I mean, she was so subtle, and there was never a word higher than another one, and it was never shouting, never swearing. I mean, never. In Georgia, I saw a dragon, literally a dragon. She never spoke Georgian because she left Georgia when she was 6. Well, her mother left, but she was 6 when she left. And she never spoke Georgian, but she spoke perfect Russian. And she would speak Russian to her cousins and her nephews and whatever. She would scream her head off. It was a dragon, honestly. And she even told my father to piss off. She had never said a word to my father. And I mean, I was flabbergasted. And I realized that actually it was happening to me too. Not the angry bit, but suddenly when you're in your roots, it revealed plenty of things that I had in me, that I could feel, but suddenly I expressed, they came out there in Georgia.
Well, you describe how the first time you stand up to your father is in Georgia.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's really a connection that built you in a way that probably you didn't expect at first.
It's just when I was at the Comédie-Française, when you are at the beginning, when you're pensionnaire, you share your dressing room with another friend of the company. And one day, and they're always in December, there's what we call les comités, where the senior members of the company decide whether you're going to be invited to be member of the board or not, the sociétaire. And every December, my friend, my share of the dressing room, was always in such a state. Every December, he was like trembling at the idea of being or not invited to become a member of the board, to become a sociétaire. And one day I said, but why on earth are you so obsessed by that? I mean, you've got main parts, you've got fantastic parts. What do you care? And he said, my father was an orphan. And he said, he's un enfant de la DAS. So his name is not written anywhere. And suddenly I realized, and I said, God, how lucky I felt, because it's something I never bothered about that. And this is why I chose theatre, which is very ephemeral. I never worried about having my name written anywhere. I mean, apart from your grave, who gives a toss about having your name written anywhere? But him, I understood that it was an obsession. He needed to have his name engraved somewhere. And suddenly I realized how lucky I felt to always felt belonging somewhere, and it was in Georgia. When I arrived in Georgia, I went, yeah, I belong here. This is my place, definitely.
But the sense of belonging also comes with a sense of duty. I was very struck because several times you refer to devoir de mémoire, which is a very strong word, usually a duty of remembrance, which is usually often taught at school to remember, the atrocity of the 2 world wars, etc. And it's connected to very important feelings such as patriotism. And you describe it in relation to your family, and also how you're obliged, or how you have an obligation towards them, and that you must have tenue. And it's very striking. Can you explain where does it come from?
Well, I guess the way they were brought up. My great-grandmother was, as you said, she was a princess, and she was a very, very elegant, elegant from the heart, elegant, purely elegant, not just attitude. She was just a very, very grand lady, but nothing grand about her. I mean, there was nothing affecté, never. Nothing pompous. She was very straightforward. She had a very strong authority, but and very witty eyes. But one day I said to her, but good manners, my God, you're obsessed. Are they difficult? And so she said, no, my darling, if there's one thing that is very easy, it's good manners. I mean, it's just pay attention to others. You pay attention to others. You get out of yourself. You put yourself into someone else's concerns, and good manners come immediately. It's very simple. So for her, it was really a way of thinking. But still always linked to think of others. Hence, the relation also with art and literature. It was the same for her. I think it was just, think of others, discover others, have the curiosity of others.
And we'll move to questions after this one. But at the beginning of the book, you describe how you identify with Alyosha in the Brothers Karamazov. And then your life is so rich through theatre, through the discovery of Georgia, through Your Dead. Now, who do you identify to if you had to pick one character in literature?
Oof. Le malade imaginaire, I guess. The imaginary invalid. I'm going to be playing him in Paris in May. No, who do I would less and less. No, but less if I had to, it's not Sissi, the Archduchess in Sissi anymore, which is already a big progress for me. Who do I identify? No, not really, not anymore. No, Alyosha, Alyosha.
Good for you.
Thank you, yes. Yeah, thank God, yes.
So we have a bit of time for questions from you. And I think a microphone will circulate. And then to conclude, you pick any passage you want to read. But
it'll be in French, sorry.
Oui, ça.
Any questions? Yes.
Il y en a toujours.
Yes, we can translate it. Or do you have someone to translate next to you?
It's fine. I can do it in English. It's fine.
Okay.
Don't worry. I was just wondering. You talk about therapy and your books. I'm just curious. Are you done with therapy, or is it a lifelong project? Do you think you can ever have enough or too much?
It's not that. It's because I was brought up in a family where, 19th century, and at the same time, we were never allowed to, never explain, never complain. And so each time we had a problem, Bobo, my mother would say, "Arrête ton cinéma, stop acting." Here's to you. And so what I love about psychoanalysts is that for me they're the only people in the world that don't put hierarchy.
Hierarchy.
So difficult. Hierarchy in pain. They don't say from 0 to 10 how much. No. Un bobo, ça fait mal. And you come and say bobo, and they say, oui, un bobo, ça fait mal. And that, for me, it's so reassuring that there's a space where I'm allowed to say bobo. And so you have to pay for it, but at least you're allowed to say bobo. And no one is going to judge you. And actually, psychoanalysts are very used to have actually patients that usually say, well, I shouldn't complain because, it's not a question of life or death. No. Bobo, ça fait mal. And so it did save my life because I would have thrown myself out of the window, that's for sure, without them. So they did save my life. But mostly because of that. No hierarchy in pain. Oh my God. Next question. Same row, two ladies.
Hello. Any plans to do theatre in the UK?
Well, the day you Brits accept to have a frog to play, yes, sure. I'm sorry, but honestly, I mean, so chauvinistic. No, you will never accept. I mean, you know what? I did this series, this mini-series with Stephen Frears, and the character to play Kate Winslet's husband in The Regime, and I was cast and got the part, and his name was Nicky, and he was English, or I don't know what he was, but there was no nationality. And the day I got cast, they said that he was French. And I said, oh God, I hope you're not going to ask me to play with a French accent. I did it once. I was dreadful. It was like, hello, hello. It was really ridiculous. And they said, no, keep it exactly as it is. I said, but then why is he French? And they said, that's because you are. And so unless they invite me to play, I don't know, Tragedy of King John, he's French. So probably, yeah, if ever they do Tragedy of King John, I might be allowed to play it. I don't know. Yes.
Thank you very much. I would like to know which one you consider your mother tongue, coming from such a very rich cultural background.
Well, I was brought up in French. I mean, I had an English nanny, and my mother speaks several languages as well, but she would only she would speak them to us only when we knew them. So if I speak English to her or Spanish, if there's no mistake, if the accent is fluent, and she'll answer me straightforward in English or in Spanish or in Russian. But if ever there's a slight little something wrong, whether it's the grammar or the accent, the ear just says, oh, that's French. So she'll answer back in French. But she wouldn't even think about it. She doesn't even correct it. My brother, I've got a little brother, he was brought up in the States. And if I speak English to him, if I speak British English, he'll answer me back in French. If I speak to him mid-Atlantic, he'll answer me back in American. If I say, hi, Matt, how are you? He'll be, I'm fine, how are you? If I say, hello, Matthew, how are you? Ça va. Because British English is further away from his ear than French. And so it's, and he doesn't even realize it. It's funny. He doesn't even think about it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
While the microphone travels, there's one question I forgot to ask, is can we hope for another book?
Thank you. Yes, I've started, but I haven't got the time at the moment because I'm on different projects in cinema. But yes, I'm writing a book about it's called Les Vaillantes, about women. Yeah. Yes.
And women have, you've always felt close to women in general.
Yeah. Love you girls. No, I do. Well, I felt as a woman for so many years in my childhood. I felt like a woman. I wanted to be a woman. Or even I thought I was a woman. I don't know, but so I always felt it. Less now, but but still sometimes I have the impression I hear things from women that other men don't. I have the impression sometimes I have the impression I can hear things that women don't say, and I just feel it. Because I had to with the mum I had. I mean, I had to, try to understand what was behind that, because definitely not tenderness, but something. So yeah. Anyway. Yep.
Yeah. Actually, so many questions, but maybe two questions. First of all, are there any roles? I would like to come back to theater. Mm-hmm. Are there any roles which shaped you particularly? And why? Second question is, are there any roles that you wish you would have played or you would like to play and you haven't played?
I don't really have this kind of jouer, faire et mourir. It's not really my thing. No, I love when a director has desire and sees me doing something, and it's already, I mean, 50% of the job is already done, thanks to his desire, his or hers desire. So no, I really like to work with people, and so I wouldn't kind of, I must say I do like Richard II a lot. But if I'm not desired by a director to do it, I wouldn't want to do it for the world. As for your first question, one day when I entered the Comédie-Française, it was first to play Arcas in Mithridate, who says 4 verses in Act 4. And half of a verse in Act 5. And then afterwards, I was asked to do Julien in The Wise Women, you call it, Les Femmes Savantes by Molière, still at the Comédie-Française, and I had 4 lines, 4 verses in Act 4. And one day, my drama teacher, who had been a member of the Comédie-Française a long time before, came to see the play. And at the end of the play, he was there outside the theatre congratulating all the actors, and he saw me and he said, "Hello, how are you?" And not one compliment. And I went, And at the end, he said, "Should we go for a drink?" I said, "Yes, sure." And we spoke of different things, and after a while, I got impatient, and I said, "But Raymond, you didn't mention anything about what I did on stage." He said, yes. About that. You're not allowed to do what you just did tonight. I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You entered very well. Physically, it was very well. But then your text, when you started speaking, you were there. The actors that you have in front of you, they're there. And they've been on stage for 4 acts. They're there. If you don't enter at the same level, then don't enter at all." And I knew he was right. It wasn't unfair at all. So every night I would build up, and I would arrive on stage and say my 4 lines and leave, and I was still like this. And anyway, and there was an actor playing Trissotin who would come out, who would stay on stage and then leave in the middle of the 5th act and join me in the foyer, waiting for the salut. And he would never say a word to me, never. And one day he entered the foyer, he looked at me and he said, "So, it took you 64 performances, but you finally found it." And again, he was right. He was. And he said, "Better late than never." So I guess that's the part that shaped me the most. Julien in Les Femmes Savantes. Yes.
Hi, sorry. I recently saw in an interview that you said you might do a sequel to Les Garçons et Guillaume à table.
It's not exactly a sequel, but I'm writing this film where it's about Guillaume Gallienne again, because that's the only thing I can talk about. No, I'm joking, but it's an actor that goes bananas after playing Lucrèce Borgia, so that's me. And it's about touring, really, with someone. It's a binôme, it's a tandem. Actually, I love that film, Tandem, by Patrice Lecomte. So yes, I'm writing at the moment. But at the moment I'm directing, for the last 5 years, I've been adapting Cyrano de Bergerac in an animation movie with animals. You know, like Robin Hood, that type of film, but 3D and 2D. I've been working on that for 5 years. So I'm still directing, but animation is so long. It's endless.
And is there a possibility that this book might become a movie?
Pardon?
Do you think you might turn this book into a movie as well?
Which one?
This book.
Oh, this book? No. Oh, for heaven's sake, no. No. I don't. No, I don't think. There's nothing cinematographic. Well, it could be, but no, it's not a film. Yeah. Not for me. The lacks of drama.
Well, maybe actually we want to see your mother back on screen, because it's one of your best characters.
Yes, but poor lady, leave her alone. I think she's had enough. She's really had enough. My God.
And one last question.
I was wondering, because you have a similar background to Emmanuel Carrère, so you've been decorated by his cousin, I suppose?
Yes, by Salome,
so
yes.
Do you know each other? Are you friends?
With Emmanuel Carrère,
Yeah.
we know each other, but from far. But actually, the other day, he said to me, he said, we should do a conference together about Georgia. And,
yeah, that'd be amazing.
I don't have the same... my grandparents never lived in this Georgian diaspora at all. All their friends were from different nationalities, but most of them were French. My grandfather was, anyway, he was Russian, but he was born in St. Petersburg, but he was brought up in England, and then afterwards he was a journalist in France, and then afterwards he was a spy for the Secret Service, for the British, for the MI6 during the war. So he felt also quite French and British, and he was actually so bilingual that he would write also articles for the English press, and he was great at limericks. He would invent and write limericks, very funny limericks. But so no, everything was. We went in this diaspora like Emmanuel was, and also. I mean, he's really a writer. I'm not a writer. I wrote a book, and I loved it so much. I'm going to write one more, but I would never call myself a writer for now. Definitely not. I would love to, but it's going to take some time. Him, he's really. When you read Kolkhoz, you can see. I mean, c'est un lettré, vraiment. Yeah, no, it's different. Yes. Oh, thank you so much. Is that Vernon? No? Is it Vernon? I recognize your voice. My God, you're everywhere. I mean, honestly, this guy is amazing. My God, a fantastic actor, Vernon Dobchev. And thank you, my God. Thank you very much, Vernon. Thank you so Thank you very much, Vernon. My God. You can be at the Brooklyn Academy, you know, seeing Kate Blanchett doing Etta Gabler. He's there. You can be seeing Sylvie Guillaume at the Royal Opera House. He's there. You can be doing a conference at the Institut Français. He's there. You can be playing at the Comédie-Française, the Imaginary Invalid. He's there. Incredible, my God. Globetrotter. Recognize your voice. So you want a reading, yes?
Yes. Well, I think it was the perfect introduction to the reading.
Right. Which one should I read? Let's read that one. La lumière des toilettes est glauque. Le reflet de mon visage dans la glace est vert et mon regard dépité. De retour à l'étage, je décide d'aller le regarder vraiment, ce portrait. Est-ce la fatigue ou le passage dans une autre ambiance lumineuse? Mais la lumière ne me semble plus aussi nette que tout à l'heure. Au contraire, j'ai l'impression qu'elle est plus ouatée, un peu brumeuse, comme dans une installation de James Turrell, et je ne sais pas trop où ni vers quoi je marche. Je traverse le hall et quelque chose dans le portrait de Babou m'interpelle soudain. Une ombre au-dessus de sa bouche. Non mais je rêve. Sorine lui a carrément peint de la moustache. Oui, c'est bien cela. Elle a des poils noirs juste au-dessus de la commissure des lèvres. Mais mon arrière-grand-mère n'a jamais eu de moustache. La seule chose que j'aime dans ce portrait, ce sont ses mains, pâles et délicates. Elles sont d'une longueur et d'une finesse remarquables. C'est tout. Son menton et ses sourcils relevés, son regard cerné qui nous prend de haut, ce n'est pas du tout elle. comme c'est étrange. Il y a dans la féminité une certaine inhérence qui se suffit à elle-même et que les hommes veulent toujours exagérer. Ils vont souvent mettre en lumière une affectation, une attitude, quelque chose d'extérieur, alors que ce qu'ils cherchent à montrer est en réalité on ne peut plus intérieur et intime chez les femmes. Sorine plaque de l'arrogance sur son sujet, alors que Babou n'aime simplement pas qu'on la devine. Elle le met au défi de le faire, et il n'y parvient de toute évidence pas du tout. Si la seule partie du tableau qui est vraiment belle, ce sont les mains, c'est parce que, débarrassé du regard et du défi que celui-ci lui lance, le peintre a compris, à travers leur finesse et leur délicatesse, la revendication non pas d'un statut, mais d'une éducation. Une coquetterie qui n'est pas affectée, mais soignée. L'artiste a tout de même su voir chez mon arrière-grand-mère, à travers ses mains, une subtilité sans effet, sans maniérisme, calme et posée. C'est le feu chez elle qu'il n'a pas réussi à maîtriser. Il le caricature au lieu de l'apprivoiser. Par manque de temps, j'imagine, ou de patience, à moins que ce ne soit par manque de courage. Décidément, je déteste ce tableau. Mais pourquoi me gêne-t-il autant ? La discussion au dîner avec mes cousins me revient. Ils étaient curieux sur mon métier et tenaient à comprendre pourquoi j'avais dû rendre mon rôle de Lucrèce, pourquoi il m'avait tant fait souffrir. J'étais incapable de leur donner une réponse précise. En regardant le portrait de Babou, je comprends qu'il y a chez cette femme une pudeur, une force, un courage que l'artiste n'a pas su rendre. Il réduit cela à de l'orgueil, à de l'autorité hautaine, et cela me met dans le même désespoir que lorsque je jouais Lucrèce. Cette méprise, je la ressens comme la même injustice que celle que je vivais il y a 2 ans, lorsqu'en scène, les autres personnages de la pièce me calomniaient. Cette femme que je jouais était jugée à l'égal d'un monstre par tous, alors qu'elle ne faisait que taire l'indicible pour protéger son fils, fruit d'un viol incestueux commis par son frère. Elle avait subi l'irréparable. Elle était souillée par la honte, et pourtant de ce crime était né un enfant qu'elle tentait de protéger sans jamais pouvoir lui révéler leur lien. Elle était d'un grand courage, mais le poète a eu besoin de la sacrifier pour aller au bout de son drame et de son propos. Dans la pièce, Lucrèce est instrumentalisée par tous. Tout conspire contre elle, et sa propre vengeance se retourne contre elle-même et son fils. Ainsi, ce monstre animé d'une humanité profonde et généreuse est condamné par les hommes dans ce qu'il y avait de pire aux yeux de Victor Hugo, l'interdiction de devenir meilleur. Tous les soirs, je perdais ce combat, jusqu'à ne plus pouvoir. Je prends trop à cœur les rôles que je joue, à moins que ce ne soient les femmes que je prenne trop à cœur, c'est possible. Depuis l'enfance, une intuition écorchée vive me fait ressentir une sororité avec les femmes et partager avec elles des choses très intimes. Souvent leur confident, j'entends parfois dans mon ventre l'écho de ce que t'est une femme. Moins maintenant, mais enfants et adolescents fréquemment. J'ai grandi avec des frères aînés de 3 et 5 ans de plus que moi. Ils étaient très liés et de fait, ils étaient plus forts que moi. Je ne pouvais rivaliser avec eux et n'étant pas protégé, cette faiblesse, cette peur viscérale de la force physique, de la violence et de tout ce qui faisait appel à elle, m'enfermait dans une passivité et me cataloguait. Ne correspondant pas aux critères masculins de mon entourage, je me suis donc mis à développer un autre type de force, celui que je percevais chez les femmes. Elles m'ont sauvé. Celle de ma famille, du côté maternel, mais aussi la femme du frère de mon père, Sylvita, ses sœurs, Cordélia et Barbara, et surtout sa fille, ma cousine Alicia. D'autres encore, comme des amis de mes parents, Martine ou Alix, qui m'ont inspiré de la confiance et aux côtés de qui j'ai pu apprendre à décoder, à lire et à m'approprier leur force, leur audace, leur liberté. À travers leur charme, leur autorité, leur délicatesse, leur peur ou leurs angoisses, j'ai su comment percevoir tous les gestes qui pouvaient trahir ce qu'elles disaient ou ce qu'elles taisaient. La façon dont l'une se mordait la lèvre inférieure, ou l'autre jouait avec ses bagues, la lenteur avec laquelle celle-ci baissait les yeux, ou celle-là prenait une inspiration profonde en relevant le menton ou en adoucissant son regard, le moindre souffle, le geste le plus minime, le regard le plus discret, la plus petite variation de voix, j'emmagasinais tout comme un arsenal. J'aurais pu faire le même exercice avec les hommes, c'est vrai, mais je m'en sentais incapable, illégitime. Les femmes me permettaient de me voir sans trop de complexe. Dans le regard des hommes, je devenais comme Lucrèce, un monstre. Je me sentais déformé et liquéfié, cabossé comme un portrait de Francis Bacon, n'être plus qu'une pâte à modeler pouvant être manipulée et écrasée à la merci de n'importe quel tyran. Le théâtre m'a permis de surmonter cela, bien sûr, mais d'abord ce sont les femmes. Depuis toujours, je devine chez les femmes beaucoup de non-dits, de doutes et de détours, mais je sais surtout à quel point elles sont fortes et courageuses. Seule, dans cette galerie, devant le portrait de mon aïeul, j'entends ce soir les mots de ce père iranien qui, l'autre jour, en enterrant son fils tué par le régime des mollahs pour avoir manifesté contre l'assassinat de Mahsa Amini, cette jeune femme tuée en prison parce que son voile était mal ajusté, clamait à toute la foule présente: « Avant, on disait de quelqu'un qu'il est fort et courageux comme un homme. Dorénavant, nous dirons qu'il est fort et courageux comme une femme. » Merci, merci Anissia. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Thank you. Merci.
Sadly, Guillaume has to leave, but there are signed copies of Le Buveur du Brume as you exit the cinema.